Right now, the international order operates on a specific assumption: the will of the West is sovereign. In this framework, human reason sits at the top of the hierarchy, acting as the filter through which we determine what is true and what is mere superstition. This worldview crystallized during the Enlightenment, a period when secular thinkers began to discard divine texts as flawed, multi-authored artifacts. Thomas Paine's The Age of Reason served as a manifesto for this shift, arguing that the human mind, not revelation, was the only reliable compass for a civilized society. Looked at through a longer lens, this secular dominance appears less like the end of history and more like a specific battlefront. It is the latest iteration of a struggle between materialistic paganism, which trusts only what can be measured, and monotheism, which begins with a divine premise. This struggle operates as an epistemological war, a conflict over the very source of knowledge. It forces a choice between two incompatible ways of understanding why anything exists at all. The secular explanation for life's origins relies on the theory of unconscious intervention, the idea that chaotic, random collisions eventually gave rise to self-replicating cells. It is a narrative built entirely on biological conjecture. Islamic theology offers a counterclaim: the universe was built by a conscious creative power and is being steadily expanded by that same power. Here, the Big Bang is not an accident of physics, but a deliberate act of construction. To maintain this connection to the Creator, Islamic tradition holds that 124,000 messengers were sent to every land across history. Their purpose was to provide a consistent anchor for this revelation, ensuring that the divine perspective was never entirely lost to materialism. These two models cannot coexist. One requires a universe of purely accidental outcomes, while the other demands a universe of total intent. To accept the possibility of a single accidental, uncreated particle is to mathematically reject the concept of an all-encompassing, deliberate creator. History shows a scoreboard that swings between these two poles. From 670 to 1683, the Islamic worldview experienced a period of manifest success, where the revelation-based system held dominant political and social power across the globe. This era moved through 5 distinct stages. It began with prophethood, transitioned into the rightly guided caliphs, shifted into kings and eventual tyranny, and is prophesied to return to the path of the rightly guided caliphs. The following centuries, from 1683 to 1979, saw a total inversion. This was the era of Islamic manifest failure, coinciding precisely with the Enlightenment and the rise of a sovereign Western will that replaced God with human reason. That trajectory hit a massive shockwave in 1979. The revolution in Iran marked the first time in the modern age that an Islamic movement successfully dismantled a secular tyranny, signaling a return of religious force to the world stage. This shift suggests that Western dominance is a temporary phase in a much larger cycle. What we see as a permanent modern reality is actually a vulnerable passing moment in a multi-century ideological war. After centuries of degradation, the question for the Muslim world became how to trigger a true revival, an event often associated with the appearance of the Mahdi, the guided leader. One response was the Salafi path, which focused exclusively on the exoteric, outward actions, literalist interpretations, and physical force. By prioritizing geopolitical violence over spiritual transformation, it attempted to fix a metaphysical crisis with purely material tools. The 12th century scholar Ibn al-Arabi offered a different vision, arguing that true victory is entirely spiritual. He believed that the degradation of the religion could only be reversed by breathing the spirit back into its practitioners. For al-Arabi, divine support is not something you seize through human strategy or military hardware. It is a force that flows naturally and exclusively from the absolute sincerity of an individual's faith. Restoration requires internal perfection. Attempting to out-materialize the West only reinforces the secular paradigm. True revival requires a return to the metaphysical depth that materialism cannot replicate. This ideological tension propels humanity toward what tradition describes as the final conflict. At this point, The intellectual and political middle ground that has defined the modern era will simply cease to exist. If human reason remains the absolute criteria for reality, then secular modernity completes its trajectory as the final, total triumph of the human mind over the unseen. But if divine revelation is proven to be the ultimate absolute, then the material world is revealed as a secondary, temporary shadow, and Islam triumphs. This moment acts as the final test of human epistemology. It strips away the diversions of territory and resources to reveal the core question: what do we actually believe is the source of reality? As this conflict nears, the psychological environment becomes increasingly difficult. The world is described as a place saturated with attractive, worldly temptations designed to distract the individual from their spiritual core. If centralized leadership collapses and society fractures, the instructions for survival are clear. Isolate yourself from all warring sects. In a world of total chaos, the priority shifts from collective action to individual resilience. Every individual is a vicegerent, a steward responsible for their own conduct. The final test is a solitary one, guarding the heart against the attractive temptations of a decaying world. Ultimate victory narrows to a singular internal point. When the clash between secularism and revelation reaches its end, survival is found in the absolute preservation of the individual soul.